my pup. Let's go!
Hey, the name's Cruel. That's King Rob Rule. It's been a long time coming, but my review for Monster Hunter Rise is finally here. After hundreds and hundreds of hours of gameplay, I've played through every single quest, crafted every single high rank armor set in the game, experimented with a plethora of weapons, and played each of those weapons a respectable amount. I can safely say I've gotten a lot out of this game. With each Monster Hunter game I've played in the past, I've fallen more and more in love with the series. And with Monster Hunter Rise, it's no different. So, does this make Monster Hunter Rise the best out of all the games so far? In this review, I'll discuss the new additions to Rise, gameplay, monster roster, and various other details in order to come to an answer to that question. But first, let's address the context of the release, for the sake of perspective. Monster Hunter Rise is the follow-up title to Monster Hunter World, which was released in 2018 on PS4, Xbox, and eventually later on PC. Compared to all previous titles, World was an incredibly ambitious title and drove the series forward in a huge way. In terms of visuals, performance, and scope, no other entries in the series came close. Sure, previous games still had their charm and die-hard fans, but there was no denying that World had taken the series to a place that set the bar high for future entries. With the announcement for Rise coming to the Nintendo Switch, there was somewhat of a concern of whether or not it could live up to the expectations of everything that World had built. Developers had even gone on record worried about the challenges of creating a seamless, open map with the limitations of the Switch. However, what the development team at Capcom achieved was astounding. The result of their efforts was arguably the best looking game on Nintendo Switch at the time, with surprisingly stable gameplay performance and hands down the greatest online experience the Switch has to offer. Oh, and did I mention that it shipped 4 million units in its opening week, soaring to over 7 million at the time of writing this review? It's safe to say that Rise was received well. So let's put this game under the microscope and see what made it such a hit. For anyone familiar with Monster Hunter, the gameplay loop is largely unchanged. You hunt monsters and you use their materials for weapons and armor. As you progress, the monsters become stronger, as does the equipment you craft from them. To those unfamiliar, well, you heard it there, that's pretty much it. If you came here for story, there's something left to be desired. But for those looking for an addictive gameplay loop that has no cap on what you can get out of it, you came to the right place. It's all up to the player when it comes to mileage. You can technically blast through the game in 30 to 40 hours if you really want to, but it's the depth of this game that allows for hundreds upon hundreds of hours of gameplay for those looking to get the most out of it. With every Monster Hunter game, there's some kind of new addition that changes up the formula a fair bit. When it comes to Monster Hunter Rise, there were 4 things, to me, that stood out. Wirebugs, Switch skills, Palamutes, and the Rampage. Let's talk about the Wirebugs first. Arguably, the star of the show, Wirebugs, a grappling hook-like mechanic, makes its debut in Monster Hunter Rise. These little guys have a variety of uses, such as increased mobility and special attacks. By default, the hunter carries 2 wirebugs at a time, but can hold onto a third if found on the map for a short period of time. Upon using a wirebug, a cooldown will be displayed until it can be used again, in order to prevent spamming. The introduction of wirebugs completely changes the game in terms of movement in Monster Hunter games, and with the convenience, speed, and ease of use, it's hard to imagine not having them moving forward with future games. Take for example the wirefall mechanic. When hit by a powerful attack that knocks you on your back, you can quickly input a direction while pressing ZL and B, and your character will quickly zip out of danger. In previous games, your character would be thrown onto their back and be forced to slowly get up, potentially forced to be thrown into the same situation once again if the monster continued to target you. Wirebugs also help with the new mechanic that replaces mounting from previous games, Wyvern Riding. I still remember when this was first announced. As an Australian, I was up at midnight to watch the live announcement. I was outside of my tablet and I was screaming. Sorry neighbours. Anyway, fanboying aside, Wyvern Riding allows you to take control of a monster for a period of time. The mount can be initiated by landing silkbind attacks, dealing aerial damage, or using a new form of endemic life called a puppet spider. When mounting a monster, the player can ram it into walls for big damage, or use it to attack other monsters on the map. The target monster of the hunt takes a while to initiate a mount, while other monsters are mounted quite easily. So there's room for strategy when it comes to how you approach your hunts with Wyvern Riding. For those who enjoyed the old mounting from previous games, I regret to inform you that this has been completely removed, and mounting a monster 3 times and up is a thing of the past. But I promise, there is a lot of fun to have with this new mechanic. Players from Monster Hunter Generations will appreciate the silkbind attacks that the wirebugs provide, as most of them function in a similar way to Hunter arts, with some of them being direct inspirations from Hunter arts and Generations. For example, the popular counter move for the longsword, Critical Juncture, returns as Serene Pose. Each weapon gets its own unique silkbind attacks, with their own unique functions. There's a lot to experiment with, which leads me into the switch skills. Switch skills are a new feature that allow for customization of moves. Every weapon is given 3 separate slots for switch skills that offer a choice between 2 moves. These moves can be swapped between hunts, and even during hunts at camp. This allows for even further depth in player expression. While it may not be on the scale of customization of hunting styles and arts from Generations, I consider this a good thing, as it isn't as overwhelming when you decide how to customize your experience. When starting out in the game, you'll have 1 switch skill available, and as you craft more of a specific weapon type, you'll unlock another switch skill. Finally, quests in high rank will eventually unlock your 3rd and final switch skill for a given weapon. This drip feed of switch skills is welcomed, as it doesn't overwhelm the player with choice at early stages of the game, and since crafting many weapons of a given type unlocks more of these, it encourages experimentation as well. None of this is forced upon the player either. It's just an option for those that want to try playing in a new way, which is the way it should be. Doggos! How did it take Capcom this long to include dogs in their games? With years upon years of including cats without even acknowledging the existence of dogs, it could be assumed that Capcom had some kind of grudge against them. But no, here they are in all of their rideable glory. And honestly, no one really cares about what their battle functions are. So long as we know that we can ride and pet them, that's all that matters. But let's say, hypothetically, that we did care about their battle function. Yeah, they're not the most reliable. Often caught attacking at nothing, or not coming to you for what feels like a lifetime when calling them. They're kinda useless apart from the convenience of riding them. Oh, bless your heart. But it does help that you can sharpen and use items while riding them at any point as well. But if we're going to measure their effectiveness up against Palicos, there's no competition. Palicos can set traps, provide strong heals and buffs, flash monsters, set up bombs, gather extra materials, the list goes on. Sure, you can't ride a Palico, but when you master Wirebugs and the location of great Wirebugs, you can keep up with and even surpass the mobility of Palamutes. The groundwork that has been built up previously for Palicos was already too strong. Maybe Palamutes will receive a buff in a future title, but for now, we can still love them, even if they kinda suck. When it comes to the Rampage, I'm not gonna beat around the bush. There's supposed to be some kind of plot relevance, but let's be real, it's just an excuse to introduce a new mode to Monster Hunter. And I'm not bashing it for that, I just couldn't tell you with a straight face why you should care about the story behind it. The point is that it's tower defense, Monster Hunter style. The feel, atmosphere, and gameplay of this is completely different to a normal hunt, so you're gonna have to get your expectations in check before trying out this new mode. When I first tried it, as I expected, I hated it. I was overwhelmed, lost and confused, and I had no idea what I was doing. But as I played it more and more, particularly with friends, and I had more of a grasp of what I should be doing at all times, it clicked. And while I don't think it will ever be as good as traditional hunting, it's an excellent way to mix things up during your playthrough. As I mentioned, Rampages are kind of like a tower defense game. You have multiple gates to defend, and waves of monsters will come to destroy them. You get to set up all kinds of defenses such as ballistas, bamboo bombs, and even villagers and key characters to help you. As you repel monsters, you will unlock upgrades to your stronghold such as cannons, machine turrets, improved ammo, and more in order to help you more effectively hold off these hordes of monsters. There's also a mechanic called the counter signal that, when in effect, gives your weapon attacks a serious power boost. So that's when you get off your machinery and start wailing on the monsters, dealing absolute ungodly levels of damage upon them. It's incredibly satisfying. You are also tasked with random side objectives that will improve your overall rank at the end. The higher your rank, the more rewards you will receive at the end. So if you can coordinate with your team effectively, you can get those sweet S+ rankings and reap the rewards that come with it. What you'll be looking for in particular are defender tickets, which you can trade in at the smithy to ramp up your weapon, giving you a choice of buffs for your weapon depending on what tickets you have. You can also use them to craft Rampage weapons, which is essentially a custom weapon. Some of these fully upgraded weapons are among the best in the game, so it's worth experimenting with them. What I especially enjoyed were the Apex Rampages, giving extra powerful, variant forms of monsters with entirely new movesets. Many of these are clearly directly inspired by the deviant monsters in Monster Hunter Generations. The best part of these hunts are always the entrances of these beasts. The music will completely change, and the monster will show up in a unique way, destroy half of the artillery, and make a beeline to the gate. No matter how well you've done up until that point, the monster will destroy everything in the first area within seconds of arriving. Some players have mixed feelings about this, but personally, I think it's awesome. Sure, it kind of dilutes how well you did in the first few phases, but I love that scramble of chasing it to the next zone and improvising to the best of your ability in order to stop it. At the time of writing this script, update 3.0, there are 46 large monsters available in Monster Hunter Rise. Ignoring monster variants, 11 of these make their debut in this game. Some of the standout new monsters on the roster include Almudron, Gosharag, and Ragnar Kadaki. The flagship monster of the game, Magna Marlow, absolutely earns his place as poster boy for the game, being one of the most fun fights in the entire game. Honestly, no matter how many times I fight him, I never get sick of it. And when it comes to the final boss, or should I say bosses, well, anyway, I won't give too much away, but the fights really bring all the new mechanics of the game together in a way that ties it all up in a nice little bow. It was really well done. As for returning monsters, well, we got the classics like Nagakuga, Rathalos, Diablos, and many returning monsters from World, such as Anjanath, Pookie Pookie, and Toby Kadachi. But we also got some surprises, like Mizitsune returning from Generations, and old favourites like Lagombi and Kezu. There's a dash from every generation of Monster Hunter, and all feel right at home within this game. Now, as the video says, this is a review for all the content from version 1.0 to version 3.0. So now that I've covered all of the new material, I'm going to talk about what we got from the beginning all the way up to version 3.0. That is, was it enough? Or should there be more content? So version 1.0, the base game at launch, in my eyes, was packed to the brim with content. There were all the village quests, which while relatively easy and brief, still provided a good introduction to the game for beginners. Although, I do question why they put the credits where they did. Even as someone who has played multiple Monster Hunter games, it was jarring to see credits after facing what was later shown to not even be the final challenge of the village quest. Not only that, but the story continued long after village and into the hub quest. It makes me wonder how many new players put the game down after seeing the credits roll. It honestly reminds me of Ending A in Nier Automata, how when most people see the credits roll, they complain that the game was good, but rather short, when in secret, for no good reason, there is actually so much more of the game to experience. But I digress. There was also the hub quests, with low and high rank, which, as I mentioned, continued the story from Village. However, many players complained that it was left in an unfinished state until the next updates arrived. While I can see their point, I disagree. I found it was a good time to step back and experiment. There are 14 weapons in the game after all. With so much armor to play with, it was fine to put the story on pause for a while. It was also a good time to start grinding for talismans, as when the final boss of 1.0 was defeated, the random talisman pool was unlocked, which to this day still drops the best talismans in the game. So all in all, I thought version 1.0 was a solid introduction to the game, which when finished, didn't leave too long of a wait for the upcoming 2.0 update. Now, this is arguably where the peak of the game hit. The 2.0 update brought the iconic Elder Dragons Teostra and Kushala Daora, as well as a welcome return of Chameleos, who hadn't been featured in a mainline game in quite some time. There was also the introduction of a certain monster that wasn't announced in the trailer, so I won't spoil, but let's just say it was more than welcome. We were also blessed with 2 new Rampages, featuring Apex Rathalos and Apex Diablos, both of which I considered to be among the most fun rampages yet. And to top it off, we got fights against Apex Azeroth, Rathian, and Mizutsune in regular hunts, something that just about everyone was asking for. Unfortunately, we didn't get any exclusive weapons and armor from their materials, so there is little incentive to do the quest more than once. The Apex hunts do tend to drop more lazurite jewels for decorations than other quests, but that will go over most people's head due to the game being a bit unclear about that. On the bright side, they are a welcome new challenge and provide an alternative to Rampage quests when crafting Rampage weapons. Patch 2.0 also introduced everyone's favourite feature, layered armour. Yes, Capcom didn't hold out on us and let us begin fashion hunting sooner than they ever have before. While being mismatched with awesome stats is cute for a while, I think it's safe to say everyone prefers to choose how they look. And while all these new additions were fantastic and brought so many more hours of content to the game, it led to a problem. And that problem was the follow-up final main patch. Now don't get me wrong, the final encounter of the story of Monster Hunter Rise was amazing, and my boy Valstrax even made a return, with a crimson glow to boot. A monster so bombastic that I never expected it to leave Generations Ultimate. Honestly, this even gives me hope for Atlkar in the future. But essentially, those were the two main things that were introduced for this patch. Sure, there was Apex Zenoga and a few more challenge quests to complete, but for those that had grinded out patch 2.0 and had their optimal gear, these offerings were made short work of. I'm a big fat Monster Hunter fanboy, and even I felt slightly empty after experiencing the 3.0 update. That's not to say the content wasn't good, but it certainly didn't keep me hooked like the 2.0 update did. I upgraded my armor, made the Valstrax set with a Valstrax insect glaive, had my fun with that, but if I'm honest, it felt like hitting a wall after that. Now, as a whole, Monster Hunter can be played forever if you want to milk it for every drop, but that's a discussion for another video. The fact is, compared to patch 2.0, 3.0 felt quite lacking. For players buying the game from this day forward, this won't be an issue at all, because they'll get all the content at once. But as a die-hard day oneer, waiting for a month for new content, this was disappointing. Was it a deal breaker? Not at all. I just think the game could have benefited from having its patches similarly sized so that expectations could have been managed easier. And with all of that being said, we probably can't expect any new content until the G-Rate expansion next year. So if you're looking to buy the game now, all the content will be pretty much available to you right now. And just like any other Monster Hunter game, there's a ton of content available to you if you want to explore everything it has to offer. With 14 different weapons to master, countless armor skills to mix and match, and optimizing hunt times for you speedrunners. I see you. I'm not one of you, but I see you. There's an endless amount of time you can spend in this game. My 400 hours across 2 different characters is proof of that. There have been many people, veterans and new players alike, that say that Rise lacks content, but the amount of content one gets out of this game is on themselves. Again, a topic for another video, but I just want to confirm that Monster Hunter still packs a punch content-wise for those seeking it. So that was my take on Monster Hunter Rise, as well as a quick review of what we got from update 1.0 to update 3.0. I think it's safe to say that Monster Hunter Rise is one of the best Monster Hunter games to date, But is it the best? Well, I'm personally going to wait until the G-Rank expansion before I give a definitive answer on that. But as a base game, I would say it's in high contention for being my favourite. The fact that we can play a game of this caliber on the go cannot go understated. Capcom really delivered with this title. Achieving what they have with Rise on the Switch is nothing short of amazing. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you thought about Monster Hunter Rise in the comments below. I'd love to get a discussion going. Also, don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you enjoyed it. And if you didn't like it, hit it up with a dislike so I know to improve for future content. Anyway, I've been King Rob Rule and I'll see you in the next video. See ya!